Next is in the names of the Deputies Denis Naughten, Michael Fitzmaurice, Eugene Murphy and Robert Troy to discuss job losses and licensing issues at the ESB plant in Lanesboro, County Longford. The Deputies have, as designated by the Cancora, 2 minutes each for opening statements and 1 minute each afterwards. Deputy Denis Naughten.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. 24 days ago, the Government published the Climate Action Plan, which talked about a just transition. That seems to have been ignored today, as 148 employees from County Roscommon and County Longford, 72 of them permanent staff, are to be laid off by Bord na Móna. The justification for these layoffs just does not add up. We have had long shutdowns of both Lanesboro and Shannonbridge power stations in the past, and this never resulted in the layoff of all of the seasonal and permanent staff. Minister, the very least that those 148 staff and their families deserve now is honesty and answers to the following questions. Has Bord na Móna delivered its contracted tonnage to the ESB under the Public Service Obligation Agreement? Minister, this layoff comes after the layoff of 100 staff by the ESB in Moneypoint due to the price of carbon emissions. We know that peat has a higher level of carbon emissions than coal, so is this the real reason why peat production is to cease in Mount Dillon? Minister, what is the opening stock of saleable peat on the Mount Dillon box at the start of this season? And what is that figure today? And why is production ceasing when only 62% of the harvest target has been achieved to date? Minister, the justification that is being given for the closure of this plant is the fact that the EPA have changed their regulation in relation to licensing. That change took place in 2013. It took the ESB 5 years to set out alternative options and 5 years to look for an alteration to that licence. That excuse doesn't stand up, and the employees deserve answers to the questions I have just raised.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Michael
Fitzmaurice. Minister, on top of what has been outlined already about 75 part-time workers and 75 full-time workers, there are 50 other subcontract workers who are being affected by this. This is the lorry drivers, the people that aren't employed by Bord na Móna, but now, because of this announcement, have no job either. For about 30 years, this hot water has been going in and has been pointed out by the Deputy. Since 2013, this licence debacle has been going on. Why all of a sudden have we decided that we're shutting down and creating more unemployment when it was your government, through Bord na Móna, that has 400 jobs gone already, 200 now? The vision that was supposed to be was for 2027, and it would take 2 more years to use up the peat that they would have in stock. But unfortunately, Minister, there's something that looks not right about this. There seems to be something, when you listen yesterday to Deputy Dooley talking about the closure at Moneypoint, and now we have Lanesboro, and what will be next? Is there an underlying trend or a desire by both government and semi-state to get rid of the likes of Lanesboro, Shannonbridge and Moneypoint? We understood, as was rightly pointed out, about a just transition. There is nothing just about 200 families this evening not having a job that had a job a few days ago in an area that hasn't been emphasised on to make sure different employment has come. Bord na Móna brought people to meetings and they talked about different ideas. Well, the ideas are 5 and 7 years away, but to put food on the table Those families need work. They deserve answers, and we want them now.
Thank you, Deputy. And I'll call Deputy Eugene Murphy. 2 minutes.
Cathaoirleach. Minister, 150 jobs gone. Total shock. None of the Oireachtas members, nor the councillors, knew anything about this until the news started to drift out this morning. It's deplorable, it's unacceptable, and you might be talking about the hot water stretch coming out from the power station in Lanesboro, but by God, you people are in hot water over this. And as Deputy Fitzmaurice and Deputy Naughten have already pointed out, isn't it all very strange? Very, very strange. And certain questions have been asked of you by the previous deputies who spoke, and we have more questions. But before I go into those questions, Minister, I want you to realise this is not just 150 people. In actual fact, I was calculating today with a brother of mine who's a councillor, and we estimate 600 or 700 people will be affected by this. Think of the poor students trying to raise a few bob for going back to college. Think of the part-time farmers. Think of other people in part-time work who for years and years relied on Bruton and Mona and were taken on, as they thought, in good faith this year, and all of a sudden, bang, they're taken out of the equation. That is not acceptable in anybody's terms, and it will not be accepted by the people of the region or by the representatives. And as Deputy Naughten has pointed out, it affects Longford and Roscommon. And again, the status of the planning application. What is the status of the planning application now? A course which was submitted to Longford County Council to extend the life of that plant for a period of years. And we all know there has to be change. But the change can only come over a period of years with cooperation and with the assistance of the people, and we all working on this together. But again, like Deputy Fitzmaurice, I have grave doubts about this whole story and how it's been developed. And answers, honest, direct answers, are needed without delay.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Robert Troy.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Well, Minister, the decision this morning to lay off 148 people has had a devastating impact on obviously the people who were laid off, their families, the community of Lanesboro and much further afield. And to my mind, the state bodies comprising of the ESB, EPA and Bruton and Mona have been negligent in their attitude in dealing with these employees. They have failed them. They have failed loyal employees who have worked hard for this state, many of them for generations. Minister, the ESB was first made aware of the change to the regulations in relation to the water discharge back in 2013. Why have they only recently submitted an application to the Planning Authority? Can you confirm, was that application withdrawn and had it to be resubmitted because the first one was not of good enough quality? The employees were promised, and we know there has to be change, but the employees were promised, as some of the previous speakers said, a just transition towards 2027. This is far from a just transition, and there is a fear that there is a sinister attempt to use the EPA to close this down now. And the people want the truth. The people deserve the truth. What is the bigger picture for this plant, for these employees into the future? Can I ask, Minister, when were you made aware of this decision? What have you done to date to try and prevent this decision becoming a reality? And this morning you were asked on the order of business by two of my colleagues to bring the three organisations together to see can this matter be resolved in a timely fashion. Have you done that? Or if not, why not, and when will you be bringing the three organisations together? And what supports are being put in place for those affected families today?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the deputies for raising this, and I can understand the concern locally. It is an appalling shock for workers to receive the notice that they have been put on protective notice as a result of decisions that have been made. As the deputies know, last month the ESB shut down Loughree Power Generating Station to carry out planned maintenance. The generation station was due to return to service last weekend, but the decision was taken on Friday the 5th of July to defer this for up to a 3-month period in order to address environmental and legal issues. As a result, Loughree Power Station does not require peat supplies from Bord na Móna. This has had an immediate adverse knock-on effect on Bord na Móna, who have been left with no choice but to cease all operations at the Mount Dillon Bog and place 72 permanent full-time employees and 76 seasonal employees on protective notice. The 148 impacted staff will remain on temporary unpaid layoff from Thursday the 18th of July until Bord na Móna are informed by the ESB that Loughree Power Station will return to normal operations. This is expected to be a period of between 4 to 12 weeks. Bord na Móna fully acknowledges the impact that this will have on employees, their families and the wider community, and the company has arranged a meeting tomorrow morning with the group of unions to work through the process and review all options. Some of those questions that the Deputy raises in relation to stocks, I'm sure will be answered at that meeting. Bord na Móna has committed to ensuring that a range of supports are available to the affected employees, and all relevant state supports will also be made available to the workers impacted by this announcement. The situation has arisen due to an issue with the Integrated Pollution Control licence issued to Loughree Power. In 2018, the ESB applied to the EPA for a licence review for the station. A key facet of this application relates to amending the conditions imposed by the EPA in 2013 on the cooling water discharged by the station. The ESB sought this amendment as monitoring of the river profile has shown that the station cannot comply with the new condition during the summer months when river levels are lower. I understand because this was a full licence review, the EPA has had to have full consultations, and that has meant that the application has taken some time to process, and the EPA is considering this application and has requested a time extension of a further 3 months in respect of its deliberations. I understand that last year, on foot of emissions in the 2018 summer, legal proceedings have also issued against the ESB in relation to the operation of the plant. It is in this context that the ESB has made the decision to keep Loughree Power Station shut down to avoid leaving the company open to the risk of further prosecutions regarding the operation of this plant. As both ESB obviously have their responsibilities, and I am nonetheless closely monitoring this situation. From the point of view of the EPA, they are of course an independent body who must make their decisions based on the processes set out in law. They have conducted the necessary consultations, and I understand will in due course bring this to their board for a decision in as timely a manner as they can. It is undoubtedly come as a major blow to have this occur at a time when we are seeing a difficult transition from brown to green, as Bord na Móna describe it. They are undertaking, and I think it is acknowledged, they are undertaking very significant efforts to diversify and to find new opportunities. And as recent as last week, I was pleased to open one of those operations. In terms of the PSO, the advice that I have is the PSO has time to run. At this stage, it continues to the end of 2019.
Minister, before calling on the next speaker, a message from Select Committee. Select Committee on Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform and the Taoiseach has completed its consideration of the Consumer Insurance Contracts Bill 2017 and has made amendments thereto. I now call on Deputy Denis Naughten, 1 minute each.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, the stories that are coming out of the ESB, Bord na Móna and the EPA just do not add up. My understanding is that the contracted tonnage has already been achieved, and I would ask you, Minister, to get answers to the questions that I have raised, and I would like a copy of those replies as well. Minister, there are 400 families directly dependent on Lanesboro Power Station, hundreds more indirectly reliant on those jobs. We need an immediate transition fund to be established of €125 million. That's 5% of the Climate Action Fund, the Rural Regeneration and Urban Regeneration Funds, ring-fenced to provide alternative jobs for Bordnamona and DSB employees and the communities that are dependent on those jobs. And that must be approved by Cabinet before the end of this month. Then we can leverage that fund to get EU and European Investment Bank funding to make a real difference to the local economy right throughout the Midland counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Fitzmaurice.
Minister, I think you should acknowledge that there's more than 150, because as was pointed out to you, there's people that are subcontractors, not matter. This is always the case, that no one thinks about the people in the lorries, the people that supply the lorries, the mechanics, and the people in actually shops which will be affected by this in the surrounding areas. Burnamona were left in an awkward position, and as Deputy Naughten has pointed out, I agree with them on a transitional fund. But we need to know and get to the root of this. Why, while there was a planning pending, could they not stay going? Because obviously this is going on since 2013. Is there a hidden agenda to wipe out the peat stations in Lanesboro, in Shannonbridge, and take Money Point out as well? I want that answered straight, Minister.
Minister, you can be in no doubt after hearing the words of Deputy Naughten, Deputy Fitzmaurice, Deputy Troy and myself. And it really is not good enough. It is, and you're talking in your reply about the station having been closed for up to 3 months, 12 weeks. I mean, this must be acted on now, and I'm going to make a call here in the House this evening for both yourself and Minister Humphreys to intervene in this issue. We cannot keep treating human beings in this manner. And if this is the way we're going to try and achieve our green agenda, well, it's not on. As I said earlier, it must be done by cooperation and people working together and not sacrificing people's livelihood. So many people in our region are going to be struggling out of this situation. So will you become involved directly? Will Minister Humphreys become involved directly? And I challenge you, for seasonal workers like students and part-time farmers and part-time employees in other jobs, will you ask the ESB and the EPA and Bordnamona to try and place some of those seasonal workers in other jobs? Let's do that for them at least, and it can be done if the will is there to do it.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Robert Troy.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Minister, as has been said, there has been contradicting stories coming from the 3 different agencies, and that's why they need to be brought together, so they can't contradict when they're in the one room, and you're the person to do that. Why did it, when having been made known in 2013, why has it taken 5 years for the ESB to make an application? And where exactly does that application stand now? And when exactly will we have a decision on that application? Because my understanding, and you said it in your reply, is as soon as possible. There's no statutory limits on the EPA to make a decision within a specified time frame like there is on the councils on Board Penala, and we need to have that. There is a need for transition. We must diversify. No one is arguing with that, but it cannot be done overnight, Minister. And I asked, what is the long-term plans for this plant? Is there a sinister attempt to close it down in order to meet our climate targets? Because that simply cannot happen, and we cannot play with people's lives, and that is what's happening now. And I also asked, what supports are going to be put in place here and now for the families who are affected?
Thank you, Deputy. On tap.
Well, first of all, let me assure Deputy Troy that the EPA they have independent powers, and they are required to conduct, where a full licence review of this nature, they are required to conduct an environmental impact assessment. That's required. They also are required to have public consultation, and that is required. So they are meeting the obligations of their act, and it is not for me to interfere in how they they conduct that business. I will convey to all of the parties the urgency that deputies have raised here, but it is a responsibility of each body to meet its obligations, and that includes the obligations to meet the conditions of an integrated pollution control licence. And I am conscious that the ESB is being prosecuted for its failures in respect of that, and this arose last summer, that is the backdrop to this. I will seek some more information for deputies in respect of the tonnages and so on. In terms of the just transition, I recognise that this is going to be a challenge for some time, and what we have to make sure we do is that we support workers who are facing change, and that means supporting them in terms of retraining, supporting them if they decide to cease and take an exit, developing the new opportunities. And I think, to be fair to Bord na Móna, I think they have been exemplary in seeking to develop opportunities in a decarbonised world. They have sought to open up new generation capacity in the renewable sector. They're also looking at the waste management sector and the resource recovery sector, which is a sector where they can develop opportunities. They're looking at aquaculture. They're looking at various horticultural projects. And there is absolutely clear that the regional enterprise strategies are also targeting support to these very opportunities, because they recognise the need to develop those opportunities, and there will be support from funds, both the urban, the rural, the regional enterprise funds, and indeed the Climate Action Fund, in response to proposals that come forward from regions who have been adversely affected, to support viable projects coming forward that will assist. And I think that is the correct way to proceed with this. And as you know, I have sought at EU level to have peace included in the same category as coal, where the EU has set up technical support for regions who are seeking to transit out of coal and are impacted by that transition. So I am proceeding on all of those fronts to develop effective policies to support workers affected by the impact of change that is coming. I can assure you that there is no sinister agenda on my part. We have to make changes, which deputies have recognised, but we are seeking to do that in an orderly way and to support people where they are particularly exposed to the impact of the changes that are coming.
Thank you, Minister.